just another minute or so to see as everyone starts to join. And then we will get started here today. So thank you all for joining. All right, excellent. We still have a few that are joining us, but thank you all for joining. And just to make sure to get started, I know our session is 12:30. We thank you all for taking the opportunity to join us here today. I'm going to kick off our session. I want to welcome you all to this interactive breakout session that is titled AI Won't Replace Teachers, but Can It Supercharge Their Impact? I want to thank you all for joining. I'm Heather Villarreal. I work here at our very own Mary Lou Bolton. I currently serve as Associate Director of Educator Preparation at Arizona State University. And this session is a focus on the key track of AI's impact on educator roles and how AI is reshaping teaching and professional learning. During our time here today, we encourage you, if you're able, to turn on your camera for engagement, to mute yourself unless you're asking any questions, just to eliminate any other distractions as our facilitators are facilitating, as well as having you ensure that your Zoom name, if you can, is accurate for any of our facilitators to be able to engage. At this time, I'm going to welcome our facilitators and turn it over as they will introduce themselves and get started here today for our presentation. Thank you all for joining.
Great. Thank you, Heather. And good afternoon or good morning to those on the West Coast. I'm Pete Fishman, Senior Partner at New Schools Venture Fund. We are a nonprofit venture philanthropy firm, meaning that we fund education leaders with early stage ideas that have potential to improve learning outcomes and expand the definition of what works in public education. I lead our Teaching Reimagined portfolio, which really seeks to make teaching a more sustainable, a more effective, and a more joyful profession. Within that, we're especially interested in the role of AI to support improvements in teachers' instructional practice. That's really going to be the focus of our time here today. So I am really pleased to be joined by David Adams, CEO of the Urban Assembly, and Mamie Hostetter, President of Relay Graduate School of Education. As you're going to hear, both David and Mamie think really deeply about the details of teaching and learning, what actually happens within the instructional core of teachers and students and content. And they're going to share with us two emerging innovations that their organizations have been developing together with teachers and technical partners. And then we're going to, after they each share, open it up for a discussion about both the opportunities and the challenges involved in leveraging AI to shape teacher development. So just to sort of orient us, we are squarely here on technology and AI's impact on the educator role. The slice of the Ed First wheel, if you're following that, around technology that optimizes educator roles. And we're going to take as a starting point for the conversation today that improving outcomes for students requires really deep attention to the details of teaching and learning. And that's true whether we're talking about one teacher, one classroom, or models of team teaching, differentiated staffing, distributed leadership, or extended reach. But a major focus of this gathering, this virtual gathering, is on teams and the importance of teams. And so it's worth noting, and David and Mamie are going to pick up on this thread, that individual athletes on sports teams use technology all the time to improve the details of their craft. And when we're talking about teams of educators, we ought to be asking how technology can help individual teachers and teams of teachers improve their instructional practice. And that's going to really be the focus for today. In teacher development, like we have a history of leveraging technology to support improvements in practice. When it comes to AI, we're asking how to build on this history, how to spread more efficiently and more effectively teacher development practices that have been shown to demonstrably improve outcomes for students. Practices like rehearsal, like instructional coaching, like high quality feedback. That's gonna be the focus for today. We wanted to start though with a poll just to get a sense of how people are entering this space. I'm gonna give you 4 options and we're gonna ask you which of these options is closest to your perspective. In 10 years, do you think AI will be 1, just another ed tech fad? Schools and classrooms are gonna look largely the same. 2, in 10 years, do you think AI is gonna save teachers time, maybe make the job more sustainable, but not improve teaching practice? 3, do you think AI in 10 years will improve teaching practice at scale, leading to better outcomes within a traditional model of school and schooling? Or 4, in 10 years, I think AI is going to transform how teachers work and learn, create new models for teacher development and student success. Take a moment to drop a response in. Again, the one that most closely represents your perspective. Just want to get a sense of how folks are entering into this conversation. Right. I see 97%, and I haven't responded. So I think we got close to 100% response rate, which is pretty good. I actually don't, I can see these results. Can others see these results? All right, can we show the results? Are we able to? Megan? I'm gonna stop sharing so we can figure out how to show the results. Yes, thank you, David. Immense suspense.
Yeah, I got
Very suspenseful.
Okay.
Megan, do you know if you're able to show the results?
We can do it.
There we go.
We did it. We got them. Are they up?
Michael Jackson, just make them wait, Pete.
No?
I'm trying to show my screen because I can see it.
We see it now.
Oh,
We see it now. We see it now.
We see it?
We do. I do. And I'm not special.
Thank you, David. Yes, we see it. Okay. For those that can't see it, 3% said number 1, just another ed tech fad. 15% that it would save teachers time, make the job more sustainable, but not improve teaching practice. 24%, so a quarter of y'all, said improve teaching practice at scale, leading to better outcomes within the traditional model of school. And 59%, close to 6 out of 10, that it will transform in 10 years how teachers work and learn, create new models for teacher development and student success. All right, good to get a sense of how people are entering. I am going to bring up the slides again. Thank you all for bearing with us on the tech. And I'm going to turn things over to David Adams, who's going to share with us a bit about Project Cafe and the Urban Assembly.
Well, thanks so much, Pete. So we're real excited to talk about Project Cafe, the classroom automated feedback environment, what problems it's solving with regards to public education. I'm David Adams. I'm going to talk to you about that opportunity in the next couple of minutes or so. Next slide. All right, so who are we at the Urban Assembly? We started in 1997. We're well known for designing schools here in New York City. And today we're taking those 22 schools, incubating solutions from those 22 schools, and then scaling those solutions nationwide. Next slide. All right. So one of the things that we've been thinking about for the last 25 years is how do we scale instructional coaching? We all know the problem set. It's expensive, it's time consuming, teachers turnover, and take in those investments. But we know that when we do this well, we will see impact in 3 areas: student success, instructional efficacy, and teacher retention. We have numbers like 5 to 10% increases, 15 to 25% increases in teacher efficacy, and 20% increases in teacher retention. But the problem is, next slide, Pete, it costs too much money. All right. So how are we going to solve for this challenge? It's called Project Cafe, a classroom automated feedback environment. We take classroom video, AI-driven analysis, we clip and store the video, and we get feedback for teachers. There are some things that we're going to be looking at, and we're going to show you when I show you the actual demonstration of the tool. We can pull in things like respectful language, on-topic speech, number of unique speakers, classroom sentiment. We're going to be able to pull in things like percentage of teacher-student word overlap. This is going to change the game with regards to giving teachers the kinds of frequent feedback that they need to develop, and doing it in almost real time. So no longer do you have to wait 2 weeks for your feedback to come to you as a teacher. You can get this in real time using Project Cafe. Next slide. All right. So how do we go from 185 minutes in terms of teacher feedback unit and almost $8 to $10,000 for each teacher feedback to everywhere between $1,500 and $2,700? So in traditional teacher feedback models, we got to prep for the observation. We got to observe the teacher. That takes about 45 minutes. You got to write the notes down, right? You got to review your notes. You got to prep for the feedback, and then you got to deliver the feedback. So that means each unit of feedback per teacher is about 185 minutes. And we know this constrains how many teachers can receive supports and instructional coaching from our instructional coaches. In fact, I was just over at the Urban Assembly Institute for Math and Science for Young Women the other day, and our principal said, David, my art teacher has not seen a unit of feedback in like 3 years, right? She only gets evaluation because ain't nobody got time to give art teachers feedback when we're being evaluated for math and reading, right? So with the Project Cafe tool, we no longer have to prep that deeply for observation because the tool, and I'll show you how it works, can automatically identify some key areas once you've established what you want to look like. You don't have to be in the classroom observing the teacher because the tool pulls out high quality interactions for you. You don't have to code teaching and learning notes. You don't have to say what the teacher said, what the student said. AI is going to do that for you. You do need to prep for that one-to-one feedback, but that goes from 30 minutes to something like 15 minutes because you're just identifying key interactions that you want to elevate for your teacher. And now the majority of your time is focused on talking to the teacher and having that conversation with that person. So we go from 185 minutes for an engagement unit in terms of feedback to 60 minutes, and we can actually get that time down to 25 to 30 minutes if you want to do this on a car on the way to your work. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the future. Next slide. All right, so Pete asked me to not talk about this, but be about this. So you guys are going to have an opportunity to actually see Project Cafe in real time, all right? So I'm going to share my screen, and you're going to see one of our schools, Urban Assembly Institute for Math and Science for Young Women. This is the teacher, Kelly Preston. We've talked to Kelly. She has given us permission to share her videos with a wider audience. And so you're going to see how Project Cafe works and how we see this as the future of teaching and learning in the UA and beyond. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to go to the video. All right, here we go. So this is what the tool looks like for our teachers. You can see here we have many different classrooms. For our teachers, they only get a login for their own class. So this is very important. Project Cafe, the classroom automated feedback environment, is not an evaluation tool. Your principal doesn't get a login. Your boyfriend doesn't get a login. The only thing you see is your actual class so that you can watch and review the things that you want to see. Now, your instructional coach can watch this with you, but we've been very, very dedicated to make sure that the privacy spaces are who they are and what they are so that we can build teacher trust. So we have many different classrooms here, but this is Miss Preston's classroom, and she is the teacher who said, yes, David, I would like you to share this with your audience. So that's who we're going to watch. Okay, so the first thing you can see here is that you have a tab on top, which is the number of speakers. I will tell you, we are struggling to capture the unique speaker metric on this. So it's going to say there was one unique speaker, but there's actually multiple unique speakers in our classroom, about 25. We're still refining the audio system so that we can capture all the unique speakers in the classroom. So that's a metric, but we're not really on where we want to be in terms of getting that metric to do what we want to do. You can see the insights here. What happened in the class? Class focused on white supremacist violence during the Red Summer of 1919. Talks about action items here, studying for a benchmark test, and key questions. Right here. They also explore the McKay poem, If We Die, which calls for resistance. The teacher introduced the Tulsa Massacre. Important questions explored the causes of impact of racial violence and its ongoing effects in the Black community. All right, so you can see, you get a recap of your class. What happened, key questions, what's going on. Now, let's get to the cool part. We are based on the classroom assessment scoring system. So we pulled some of those constructs from there, and we can actually pull the questions that the teacher asked and watch these about 5 to 10 second video clips of that teacher interaction so that the teacher has a sense of how students responded to her questions. So down here, when you do this export, we don't have it in this screen. You can actually get a list of all the questions and a list of all the metrics. We're not going to do that here for the sake of time, but what I will do is I'm going to pull an open-ended question from this space for you guys so you can take a look at how Project Cafe works in its beta version. All right. Did this get big for you guys? All right. Thanks, Mimi. Here we go.
Trying to do anything to keep themselves in control. Good. So number 3, how would this impact the Black community, do we feel? This period of like increased mob.
That's it, folks. It's a very short clip that is really focused on an instance of an interaction, right? And so what our instructional coaches do is they look at all the questions beforehand with using our CSV loadout, and they say, we're going to focus on these 5 questions and ask the teacher, like, what did you think about these questions? How did the students respond to these questions? And as a teacher, you can then use these questions to then think about, well, how am I planning for my pre-planned questions, my executed questions, and how students responded? So that's our questions. We can also look at things like positive climate. You can see on the right hand here, we have language word usage, respectful language, encouraging language, and insulting language. Let's just take a look at some encouraging language and see how teacher Mrs. Preston uses this to support her students in her classroom.
Bad and hungry dogs. Okay, so you guys did a great job. Clock the Case poem is urging African American communities to resist.
All right, did you guys catch it? It was pretty quick, but you guys did a great job, right? So this idea to really capture these unique and discrete interactions help teachers build a schema and organize their teaching and learning in the classroom. The last thing I'm going to show you is that we have a graph around teach time and teacher talk time and student talk time and on-topic speech, right? And this allows the teacher to understand the difference between how they think they're doing, how they're actually doing, and gives them an understanding of what the students are actually talking about in their classroom. So Pete asked me to be about it, not just talk about it. This is the actual beta tool that we're piloting here in our urban assembly schools. What I want to do in terms of the next 2 or 3 minutes or so is ask, how would this change, and you can just drop it in the chat, how would this change your approach to teacher development if you had Project Cafe in your school of education, in your classroom, in your district? And you guys can just drop that in the chat, and we can have a brief conversation. How much time do we have for this? Remind me. 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Pete's telling us 3 minutes, so type briskly. So David Rosenberg, is this the estimated cost per teacher per year? David, most of the cost right now is driven by the hardware. So buying the iPads, buying the microphones. We anticipate we can get this cost to $300 to $500 when we remove some of those hardware requirements and get to the actual production phase rather than buying all the iPads ourselves and sending them out to the school. So we're looking at that space. All right.
And David, we are talking here about emerging innovations. You mentioned a moment ago that is in beta right now. Can you just sort of share with us where you are in the arc of development?
Yeah, so we have 17 classrooms using Project Cafe. We have about 20 teachers who are piloting it for us. We have so many cool things that we're looking to be able to do. We're looking to be able to share clips. We're working through privacy considerations around sharing, but we know that more teachers being able to see high quality interactions will help socialize those more quickly. And then the other thing that we're looking to do is move it from a iPad-centered approach to a bring your own device approach, right? We would like to just have an app and you can just use your own phone, but right now we have to ship the whole kit and caboodle out with you in order to get the right metrics and train the algorithm effectively. Thanks, Stephanie. Yeah, we know that the power of video-based feedback is the power of being authentic. You no longer have to trust that the person writing the things down wrote the right things down 2 weeks later when you're coming back to remember the thing that the teacher or the principal said that you did. You can actually just click into the interaction itself. And I'll say one more thing as we move back to you, Pete and Mamie. The ability to see what's happening means that you don't necessarily have to trust the algorithm 100%. I'm sure we're going to get things wrong in terms of encouraging language or insulting language or questions. But when you click into the interaction, you get to validate whether or not that interaction actually makes sense. And that's what gives customers or teachers a sense of trust around how we're thinking about this work. So that is Project Cafe, the classroom automated feedback environment. I'm David Adams. We are the Urban Assembly, and I will turn it back to Pete to turn it over to Mamie.
It's just flowing right through me. Over to Mamie.
Cool. Thanks, David. Thanks, Pete. I'm going to share a little bit about what we're working on at Relay in this space, and mostly I'm going to give you guys a chance to play with it. So we are building an AI-driven teaching simulator at Relay with partnership and support from a lot of folks on this screen. We are, of course, not the first people to think of this. Simulation has been a part of preparation for lots of professions for a long time. Flight simulators are probably the most famous example. A lot of simulation in the medical world these days as well. And for you Commanders fans, sorry, the use of VR to train quarterbacks in the NFL has become a hot topic in the professional athlete lane as well. So we're trying to bring this type of simulated preparation to teachers. And we've got a vision, right, where any teacher anywhere can use time before class, between classes, as part of their teacher prep program to try on their teaching in a low stakes simulated environment before they're doing it in a high stakes real environment with kids. And we are at Relay 2 prototypes in to designing an AI-driven teaching simulator. Prototype number 1, we finished up about this time last year. It was a chat-driven simulation that we built in partnership with the folks at the University of Pennsylvania AI Lab, Ethan Malik and Lilach Malik. It was giving new teachers a chance to practice some of these beginning of year, get to know you conversations with students. For those of you who've worked with new teachers, you know they can sometimes sound real awkward in those first conversations with kids. So this was giving them some chances to practice before talking to their real students. Later this fall, in about September, we finished up prototype number 2, and I got to share it with some of you on this screen, but we've been refining it since then. So even if you've seen prototype number 2, it's better today than it was in September. And this prototype we built in partnership with the folks at Chiron Learning. And this was designed to give, again, new teachers practice at some of the most foundational teaching skills, giving clear directions, responding to kids when they're making the right choices, responding to kids when they're not making the right choices. Very 101 teaching skills. So 101, in fact, that we called the prototype Teaching 101, and it is sitting on our Canvas platform today. So I'm going to give you real quick instructions about how you can go try your hand at Teaching 101. In a second, I'll give you the logon for Relay's Canvas page, which looks like this. You're going to get to a menu page that looks like this. You're going to click on the big brown square of Teaching 101, and it's going to bring you to a set of modules, and I'll give you the link to get to this one in particular, where you're going to meet Dr. LaQuite Manning, one of our great faculty members at Relay. She's going to give you a little bit of modeling in terms of how to, for example, give clear directions to some students about their materials, and then you are going to try to do the same thing, and you're going to get some feedback from an AI-driven coach. So let me put links and directions in the chat, and then I'm going to give you the next 6 minutes to go try it out and see how you do. Boom, long chat there, but it's got everything I just showed you, from getting to Canvas to logging in with a demo set of credentials to getting to Teaching 101 to choosing an interaction. You can choose any interaction you want, but I gave you a representative one there if you want to go straight to the goods. And I'll start my timer now, 6 minutes for you guys to try it out. We'll see you in 6. Okay, believe it or not, that was 6 minutes. So whether you are NFL champion level at giving clear instructions to a class of 8th graders or just dusting off some of that rust, you now all have access to the full Teaching 101 slate of interactions. So you can go practice and get some feedback anytime you want. Now, that version is, as I said earlier, a prototype version. We are not putting this in front of teachers in place of high quality preparation. We are, however, working hard to get to a minimum viable product that we think could be an open access AI driven teaching simulator so that any teacher anywhere could practice not just some of the foundational things that we've got here in Teaching 101, but some of the most complex, sophisticated parts of the teaching job so that they can get it right in a low stakes environment first in order to do it super well in the high stakes environment with their kids in their classroom. I'll pause there. Pete, I'm going to hand it back over to you.
Right, we've about 10 minutes or so left. If you have questions, feel free to drop them into the chat at this time. I have a couple questions just to get the ball rolling for David and Mamie. One is, we saw this earlier in the poll. I think it was close to 60% of participants in this Zoom breakout right now think that AI has the potential, at least, or maybe predicting in 10 years, it will transform the way that teachers learn and work. When you all think about the potential of leveraging AI in particular to support teacher development, where are you seeing the greatest promise? And in particular, as we think about some of the themes in this conference around team teaching and differentiated staffing, are there particular opportunities there related to how we organize staff within schools and how then they also grow and develop in their craft? We'll start with Mamie.
Yeah, my view and Relay's view has always been that practice and feedback are so key to moving from novice to good to great to truly expert, and that holds for most fields, but certainly for teaching. And I think the most promising ways that I see AI being used in service of teacher development are in that practice and feedback lane. I think what David and his team are working on, getting teachers better, more efficient access to what's going well in their classrooms, what they could be doing better or differently. That's an aspect of practice and feedback in the same way that this simulator idea is an aspect of practice and feedback. And I think there are a bunch of other initiatives out there that are along these same lines. In terms of how it relates to strategic staffing, this is where I will lean into my sports metaphor, right? Like the quarterback of the Commanders is getting a lot of press because he's using virtual reality. He plays a very important role on that team, but there are so many roles on so many teams that have very specific and very important contributions to make to the ultimate goal. In our case, the ultimate goal is kids having great experiences and great outcomes in schools. So I can imagine this AI-driven practice and feedback phenomenon, helping not just the teacher of record to practice and get better, but the paraprofessional, the expert from the community who's coming into the classroom just once or twice a week. All the roles on a teaching team that we can imagine, I think, benefit from practice and feedback. David, love to hear your thoughts on this too.
You said it so great. Those two terms are really the key. And the big problem set is that they're expensive. Practice takes time. Time is expensive. Opportunity costs for practice are opportunity costs that could be used to actually teach. So we have this kind of OJT model where you're learning to teach while you're teaching in front of kids and doing all your mistakes. Doing that in front of a virtual audience or an AI-driven audience means that you can get more feedback and do more interesting things without having somebody yell at you from your classroom and tell you that you're unprepared, right? So I think that comfort level is something we're really excited about, as Mamie was talking about. And then the feedback space, the same thing that drives teacher learning drives student learning. So practice and feedback for students will help them learn more, differentiate more. Same thing that's happening for teachers. And I just want to throw this out when we talk about equity. This is really just a dollars and cents conversation to me. We want to make sure that if you can't afford an instructional coach in your school, if you are out in rural areas or your budget is a little tight, your teachers can still get feedback. If you don't teach math, science, or reading, you still deserve feedback, right? So let's just do that and reduce the cost by employing technology that exists today.
David, there's no shortage of questions that sort of come up when we start talking about the integration of AI, and particularly connected to video and video in classrooms. What are some of the things that keep you up at night when you consider the challenges of integrating AI into teacher development, and some of the specific ways that you all are doing that with instructional coaching and video-enabled instructional coaching?
Honestly, the thing that keeps me up is a principal saying you need to go and spend 2 weeks on Project Cafe because you're underdeveloped in this X, Y, and Z, and then come back to me or else you're going to get fired, right? This notion of using it to force teachers to do something rather than to develop those skills. The technical space, this is not that complicated. I mean, Mamie's tool demonstrated, right? Natural linguistic processing. We can take information in, we can take emotional information in. Those things can be trained, they can be validated, they can be quality assured. We can look at different contexts, we can look at different languages. Those are solvable problems, right? You can start off with a problem set and you can develop 5 or 6 solution sets to it, and you can quantify how well you're solving it. What I really worry about is like when somebody uses the tool as a way to strip teachers of autonomy and agency rather than increase it. And we're working with our UA schools and our principals are motivated and our teachers are trusting, but I can imagine some nefarious approach where somebody starts to say, if you don't do this, then, right? And I don't think that's the way. That does really keep me up at night because we've scaled solutions across New York City, and every now and then, your initial kind of idea, after 1,600 schools, 1.2 million kids, can get a little funky.
One of the things you're doing at this early stage is piloting and testing. You mentioned, just 17 classrooms right now, and sort of surfacing the implementation challenges as well as the experiences that teachers and coaches have. What are some of the things that you're hearing from them through this work?
Yeah, that's a great question, Pete. So, our new teachers are excited. Relay has used videotape for a long time to ensure that teachers get more feedback more frequently and addressing some of the costs. ASU uses videotapes. So our new teachers are not unused to getting that feedback. What they are unused to is not getting that feedback in real world, right? So that's something that's been exciting. Our unions, I can't say are really excited about it. They're not like, oh my God, David, so excited to have 24/7 videotaping in the classroom. So we need to get some policy spaces in terms of what is discoverable, what is not discoverable. If somebody says something weird, can we go to the videotape as we did today? Or is that part of the teacher's record? So some of those things are a little bit complicated to work through. But certainly our strong teachers who spent time developing other teachers, but nobody developing them, are excited. Our new teachers who used to get teacher development, but then they said they were good, and they're like, now you only get teacher evaluation. They're excited about that as well.
Maybe David shared something that keeps him up at night. What's keeping you up at night?
I think practice and feedback makes you better at the thing that you are practicing and getting feedback on. But if that thing is the wrong thing, then you're getting better at the wrong thing. So I think as we get further along in the development of the teaching simulator, making sure that we're broadening the circle to include lots of different perspectives on what great teaching looks like. And we've had some great advisors at our side through the first stages of this, from the folks at Unbound Ed to the folks at TFA to the folks at University of Michigan and University of Virginia. That's not all of the perspectives out there on what it takes to be a great teacher. So making sure that we've got a really inclusive perspective on what it takes to be a great teacher, and a really clear, definitive description of what that is. The folks know what they're getting into, what they're going to be practicing, what they're going to be getting feedback on. I think that clarity up front is almost as important as the practice and feedback itself.
Michelle Finley has a great question that she put in the chat, and encourage other folks that have questions, put them in the chat. How is the LLM trained to recognize what is best practice?
Great question, Michelle. The LLM is not trained to recognize great best practice. The LLM is trained on discrete interactions that are pulled from the classroom assessment scoring system. So we don't say to a teacher, your open-ended questions are great. We say to a teacher or coach, this is an open-ended question. This is not. And the teacher or coach can then use that information to set a plan of development, to set a plan of improvement or not. But we're actually very rarely passing judgment on a teacher. We are cutting out the mechanisms of collecting information and presenting it back to the teacher so that more feedback can happen more frequently.
Yeah, and similarly, we're not training our LLM yet on like hours of classroom footage or anything like that. We're for the Chiron learning relay prototype that you all are playing around in. We are just using Relay's curriculum and Relay's handbooks for our faculty in terms of what they should be looking for and how they should be giving feedback to novice teachers in our Relay graduate courses. So we have not yet even gotten to the stage where we might be, pulling in reams of data from the, outside world, if you will, to train the LLM. We're just using prompt engineering based on Relay materials.
Yeah, I think this is a really important point because in both instances, in both tools, it is being trained and designed around a very particular instructional vision, instructional framework. So in the case of urban assembly, David mentioned CLASS, which is the classroom assessment scoring system developed out of the University of Virginia. Tremendous amount of research on that particular tool and framework, particularly in early childhood and early elementary settings. And in the case of the simulator, really anchoring on the framework of materials developed over the past decade plus at Relay. Other questions? Just a couple minutes left. All right. In the last couple minutes then, David, Naomi, I'll ask each of you to give us, we were asked, I think, to end with a call to action, like something to take away from all of this time. What is your call to action for us?
So, Pete, my call to action for folks over here is to get after solutions in public education. We have the ability to use AI to democratize how we think about solutionizing. You don't have to have a software degree. You don't have to be a computer science major to create solutions that can transform teaching and learning. So to the folks out here, just know we're a nonprofit, just like many of you. We work in schools. We're not software engineers, but we have an idea and we know what the problem that we can solve is. And that's how we develop Project Cafe, and you can too.
My call to action would be, I'm a one-note song, practice and feedback. Like, figure out how can we get our educators, whatever their role is in their educator team, how can we get them more access to practice and feedback? Technology is one way to do it, and there are lots of other ways. Thanks for all the ways that you guys are getting practice and feedback opportunities in front of your educators.
Well, thank everyone for joining. I think Heather's going to close us out from ASU. Appreciate everybody taking time and choosing to be part of this breakout session.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So at this time, I extend a thank you to our facilitators and